A lot of complex feelings about this comment that I want to address. The first is that I did not save my siblings. Did I do things to try to intervene as much as possible when I shouldn't have to? Yeah. But I want to make it known, if you're new to my page, I was an active participant in my siblings' abuse in childhood and into early adulthood. I did not understand the dysfunction that was so deeply rooted in my entire family. I did not understand that my mom was purposely triangulating us against one another and using manipulation tactics as a way to keep us separate from each other so that we couldn't rise up against her together. I didn't realize that by betraying the trust of my siblings, by, for example, if I was in trouble for something, by sharing something with my mother that another sibling told me in confidence as a way to deflect the heat on me in that moment, I did not realize that that was abusive. And I have empathy and compassion for my younger self because I was a child and I was taught that this behavior was normal because I saw my mom do it to other people. And don't get me wrong, my siblings also did this to me. My siblings also triangulated me. However, that doesn't mean it was okay. And that's something that's so insidious about these family dynamics, is that it's almost impossible for you to emerge from them, especially if you go no contact with parents and preserve a relationship with your siblings. Even if all of you go no contact with your parents, it can be very difficult because your childhood consisted of you guys being forced to compete with each other and harm one another to prevent from being harmed yourself. Sorry, my cat's messing with their feeder. And while, again, you're a child, have empathy for yourself. If this applies to you, you didn't know better, you did what you had to survive, it still is fucked up, And I'm really big on taking ownership and accountability for the roles that you play, the parts that you played, and recognizing that and still being able to have compassion and empathy for yourself, right? Because that's how we avoid shame, and shame spirals is what makes us stay quiet about things that we shouldn't stay quiet about. But especially the fact that I continued that behavior in adulthood. I did some very toxic things to my sisters, specifically my middle sister. When she decided to go no contact, I was an enabler of the abuse. I sided with my parents. I said she was overreacting. I said that, I said all the things that people say to me now when I talk about being no contact because I was brainwashed. My family was like a cult. My parents were the leaders. My mom was the leader, let's be honest. My dad was fighting for the spot of leader, but never really got it, and was so bitter about the fact that he never had it that he just went along and enabled in hopes that that would somehow get him to the position of leader. But I digress. Being in these family dynamics forces you to abuse each other, just like being in a cult causes cult members to abuse each other, because to be able to stay in that circumstance, in that environment, part of the group norms is lateral abuse towards each other. And that's a really, really difficult thing, I think, to accept. And similar to why we call it the generational cycle of trauma, and that you're breaking the cycle, why it's so hard to break is because just like how parents feel a lot of shame about the way they treated their kids, and to acknowledge that maybe they were abused in childhood would mean that they'd have to acknowledge the ways in which their parenting styles were abusive to their own children, and that's too hard for them to accept because they're so ashamed about it. It's very similar, even in sibling relationships within these families, that a lot of people don't leave even if they don't have kids because they cannot bear the guilt of recognizing the ways in which their involvement in this dysfunctional family would mean acknowledging and accepting that they had abused their siblings and been active participants in their siblings' abuse. And that's a really hard thing to stomach, to swallow, to accept, and to own. Which is why I'm talking about it, because I think it's important to own it, while also recognizing that you're a child. You only have the tools you have, right? You only have the things that have been taught to you and modeled to you as ways to keep safe, and those were the only tools I had. I didn't have other options. I didn't know other ways to protect myself. I didn't have access to other resources because I was a child, you know? But yeah, I just want to avoid this like saviorism rescue mindset, because if you talk to my siblings, I have talked to them about this, they're not thankful. They have a lot of resentment towards me, and honestly, understandably, a lot of resentment towards me because I did some really fucked up things as the oldest sibling. Did I have my moments where I tried to protect them? Yes, but then I learned that trying to protect them got all of us harmed more, and that actually going along with the abuse led to less obvious abuse in my childhood mind. I didn't understand the emotional abuse that was happening, the manipulation, the breaking the boundaries, the violations of trust, that also was abuse, because it wasn't as obvious to me as physical abuse. I hope this makes sense. And I'm kind of nervous about posting it, honestly, because it doesn't make me look great, but I think that means I need to post it even more.